you can end up really being dominant. And as we plan to do on our super secret project.
I cannot say dominant in Europe if there's lawyers in the room. Antitrust, antitrust.
You can win in a way that's permanent. Now I know it's funny, but like the lawyers won't let me speak anywhere in English anymore. This is like, because I'm always saying things I'm not supposed to say, like, we want to build but apparently no one cares what I said. But in any case, you can build a position that's structurally advantageous to you and disadvantageous to people competing against you. One of my critiques of myself, I'm a former reformed academic, so I have a tendency to focus on exactly the problems that no one's interested in. We had an idea of taking a methodology for visualizing data that was used to stop cyber criminals at PayPal and bring it into the intelligence community to stop terrorism. And like all normal businesses, you have a great idea. When you come in contact with the client, you realize that the idea is a total waste of time, and you're going to have to explain to your investors why the idea sucked and they're going to lose all their money. So we discovered that, in fact, what you need to work with intelligence services, you need to be able to rework the data so you have it in one place, but without moving the data. So we sell anti-terror software in the whole world, especially actually in Europe. That was our whole business until 5 years ago, but in 3 years ago we launched another product which has been very successful. And what the product does, if you're in the German context, you'll have read a lot of articles about how hard it is to protect data because the data is in different places. Our product brings the data together and then does it according to strictest laws in the world, which are European laws, so that you actually only see the data you're allowed to see. And the end result is, without violating cultural or societal norms, you can actually find terrorists much more efficiently, which has been the case all over the world and especially in Europe. And so that was our core business, and now we've rebuilt a product in the commercial sector where we do roughly the same thing, and it's applied to lots of industries. I guess the core idea of Palantir actually was not technical; it was philosophical, and the philosophical idea was Hegelian. In German philosophy, I have a PhD in what amounts to German philosophy. The idea was to remove the contradiction between fighting terrorism and preventing and protecting civil liberties or data protection. So typically you have to choose, people say you have to have no data protection or no civil liberties in order to fight terrorism, or you have lots of civil liberties and bombs are blowing up. And we believed you had to solve both problems at once, and you had to do that because otherwise you'd never have a consensus. And that, quite frankly, almost killed the business because our investors, who were largely American, said no one's going to pay for that. And we think it's stupid, and if you tell people you're interested in data protection, they'll think your product doesn't work. And then years later, we're the dominant platform in Northern Europe, which is something that is not known and we don't talk about publicly, but it's the dominant platform because it's very hard to actually protect data and find the terrorists. You can protect the data and not find the terrorists, or you can find the terrorists and not protect the data. That doesn't work in Northern Europe. It does work in other places. And that's basically our business. I would worry, if I were the average person, about what's happening with my data, under what conditions, who's seeing it. Is it going to totally destroy my private life? You know, we live in a world, especially if you're living in Europe, where you actually have a fair degree of privacy to control your life and what you decide to disclose, both to society, to your employer, and in your personal area. And I do think that I think that a lot of these things come down to transparency and competence. Do you disclose what the rules are? Are the rules enforced? And can you be sure, without relying on a software engineer, that the rules are enforceable? And so if those conditions are met, then you have a massive opportunity. If they're not met, the way in which most of us in this room want to live is going to deteriorate. So I think you need to really, there's a legitimate side of the debate, which is that you have to get these things to work. There's the Luddite side of the debate, which is that we're going to throw out all technology that won't work anyway. It's massively advantageous for us the more strict the rules are, because it's actually very hard to build these things. You can't build a data integration engine after you know the rules. You have to build one in anticipation of what the rules could be. It's like building a language. We believe one of the caricatures of our business in Palo Alto is that we're both in bad and in good, a little too German. So we spent years figuring out how we would build this, and then implementing. The marketing sucks, but the product is phenomenal. And so you have to actually spend years planning the philosophical system. But if you've done that, then it's very elastic. That would be the term we would use. It's very elastic, meaning we like it also for more. I mean, the reason we started this was for moral reasons. I do think, to the topic of like, what does it mean to live in a capitalist society? Part of it has to mean that you have a right to have your own space where you don't have to disclose if you don't want certain aspects of your life. You need a way of enforcing what the rule is to a third party and have transparency. And these things, although the technical means you work with commercial data and the technical means you work with are actually strikingly different, the requirement to be able to work with data at scale is obviously absolutely crucial, because this is how you make cancer research, other research work better, while simultaneously being able to show people that you're only working within the bounds of what they have agreed to.
I think people don't trust you. I mean, those people who know you trust you, but the people at sort of the general public doesn't trust you, and they don't trust me either. And trust is a big problem.
And so, like, what are some of the true reasons people don't trust institutions, or in this case, Silicon Valley? And I do think there's this one issue that Silicon Valley companies are not only tone deaf to, but it's like there's a question of who decides how society works, the society or Silicon Valley. So you have the das Primat des Staates. Is it Silicon Valley or is it sovereign nations? And I think one of the things that gets Silicon Valley companies, there are a lot of things that get Silicon Valley companies into trouble that I think are our fault, like that they go from nothing to something. But I do think there's this, it's never clear when you're talking to the large, especially consumer internet companies, do they believe they're subject to their own laws or to the laws of sovereign nations? And this is something that irritates people legitimately. And I think that is something that, like, that's a legitimate area where the companies have to change. The things where I think we can help as companies are showing transparent competence to your partners. And obviously, in our case, it's hard because our partners tend to, even in the commercial area, we really don't talk, we're not going to talk about the actual work we're doing. But I do think finding better ways, for example, one of the things I was talking to you about, one of the reasons people don't trust the government is they don't see any output. One of the things I get to see, for example, in Europe that we can't talk about is I see every week, at least every week, I know about, and I don't know everything because I don't have the right classification to know it, but at least every week I know of a terror attack that some European authority has stopped, but no one else knows. I think if people actually knew how many terror attacks have been stopped in Europe just in this year, that would change people's idea of, like, am I just paying taxes? Are they doing anything? What's going on? The people have this, creating transparency where things are working well, I think is something that we could do a better job of. But then I think there are things that are legitimate critiques, like, why would European countries sign up for their whole media landscape getting destroyed and the people doing it pay no taxes? Like, that's not going to work out well as, like, creating trust. You have a lot of companies that are clearly trying to build dominant platforms to control every aspect and would prefer a world where they're sovereign. And that isn't going to work. Beginning point of Palantir was that a human mind combined with a human computer outperforms a superior mind or a superior computer alone, which is a proven fact that people don't believe. So if you take a chess player with a 2,000 rating, which means you would lose every single time to a chess master, and you take a reasonable computer, you can beat the best chess person in the world, and you can beat the computer. The mind plus computer thing is a big part of what actually works. Distributions are interesting because whether it's terrorism or finding the best research or finding something, almost all the values in the extreme, whether positive or negative. So in criminals, if you look for the average criminal, they're doing 99% of the crimes, but 99% of the damage is from the professional criminal and the professional terrorist. And 99% of the research that's valuable comes from the one research company with the one research. So So this way of looking at the world is particularly valuable for preserving jobs. So if you take Airbus, for example, they have one of the things that makes Europe special is you have all these highly trained people. For example, at Airbus, there's 3,000 of them using our Palantir product to do preventive maintenance to predict where which parts will fail. Now that's obviously good for them because they seem to be winning. They're doing very well against their main competition. But it's also very good for society because if you don't have a narrative, there's both the objective reality, which I agree with you completely on, and then there's the perception of the reality, which is, I think, part of the problem, at least if you look at the rise of the Trump voter, is it's not just reality, it's the perception that reality tomorrow will be worse than reality today. And so showing people how you can actually take the skilled workforce and make them skilled in a way that they're valuable tomorrow is super valuable. You have something that's the mind, and you have software writ large is exceedingly powerful, and it's powerful for the companies you work with, but it's also particularly important morally because I don't think if you don't have a narrative about why the average person or the educated person or partially educated person is going to have a job tomorrow, I think you get populism in every country, and I think that's what you're seeing in the West, maybe for slightly different reasons, and it's dangerous.
Now you're convinced by capitalism.
Well, I still run Palantir like a commune. So everybody except for the social part isn't quite as good, but everyone gets shares. You work all the time. You mostly like people except for the ones you don't like.